What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be updating you guys on my Volatile dead Spellslinger. This build is an excellent build for mapping and can bring you into endgame content, and I'm going to be going over some things about this build that I've learned and wanted to share with you guys. First, I'm going to be going over the overview of this build and everything I thought about it. Then we'll be going into the new gear I've updated myself with and anything in the future I want to do with it. Later, I'm going to be talking about some cluster jewels and some general questions you guys had about that, the passive tree, and the spawning of Volatile dead balls. So you guys have a lot of questions on that, so let's get into the video. Now I'm going to get into the overview of this build. What did I think? How did it perform? Actually, it performed very well. It was a great mapper. Really little investment in this build got me to red maps pretty easily, but once I wanted to farm T16 smoothly, I had to put a little more currency into this build, which is kind of expected anyways out of builds, so it wasn't too much of a bother. Another thing is that the bossing was actually quite difficult, at least on budget gear. If you're going to try to boss kill like level 8 Awakener, you're going to need to invest a lot of currency into this build. Going things like Lowlife, where you can get extra auras, is actually a great advantage you can take in this build for more DPS and have just as good mapping. If you have any interest in making a Lowlife build, which I truly suggest, you guys should check down in the description down below. I have a POB link for a Lowlife Volatile dead Spellslinger. It is really good build. It is made by Riscal, someone who wanted me to check out their build and make improvements on it. I didn't really do much. They have a really well made build already, a lot of energy shield, a lot of damage, and I truly enjoy their build looking at it, and it is something I'm most likely going to try later on in this league or next league. So if you're interested in Lowlife Volatile dead Spellslinger, which is going to be much more capable of bossing than my build, but it's going to have just as clean mapping, I recommend you guys try that. Now I want to talk a little bit more about my decisions on the build. I ended up going with Detonate Dead, and I believe that's the best overall choice you can go with it. I didn't like it at first. I really liked Herald of Ash playstyle a lot more, and I still kind of do for the mapping. But Detonate Dead adds a single target DPS where you can kill rare mobs a lot faster, and bossing is a lot cleaner, and I truly recommend it. So in this build, what you're going to go for is get a wand with trigger socketed spell. That's actually one of the mandatory things on this build if I were to make anything mandatory. And this allows you to cast Wave of Conviction without using Spellslinger on it. This opens up an extra aura skill, so we can put something else, and Detonate Dead fit that bill really well for adding single target DPS and scaling with our DPS that we were already generating. Now I'm going to get further into the gearing section of this build, just to inform you guys on what I went with and what to look out for. So Wand already mentioned trigger socketed spell. You guys are going to want that. Your biggest DPS increase is going to be from adds fire damage and adds fire damage to spells, so primarily try to get the highest rolls you can on that applicable. Next, I would say to look out for plus level of fire spell gems, and non-chaos is extra chaos is pretty nice, but spell damage and fire damage, they don't really increase our damage to a crazy amount as much as adds fire damage does, but if you have a high spell damage roll, kind of like how I do mixed with it, you get the best of both worlds. For a shield, you're going to want as much life as you can on it, as well as fire skill gem level increase. It's really helpful. A lot of damage increase from plus levels of your Volatile dead gem. But if you're looking for something a little cheaper, then just go for high spell damage and high life. For a shield, nearby enemies have -9 fire res is an excellent choice. I actually found this to be better even than the helm enchant I had earlier. This allows us to do more single target DPS, which this build really needed more so. And if you get a helm enchant on top of it, like I'm gonna go try for, this will be one of the best helmets you can get with nearby enemies, life, and helm enchant. I just wish the life was a better roll. Impulsas is a great choice. I've had it on pretty much the entire league. I've seen it many times. It's a lot cheaper now, so I don't mind recommending it anymore, but you can always just go with a rare chest with high life. I highly recommend that as well. My amulet, I got plus level of skill gems on it. I have 2. It's kind of expensive to do that. I don't have life on here, unfortunately, but I would say to get plus level of skill gems and life on your amulet, the plus level is really important. Just try to go for the plus level of all fire skill gems. It's a lot cheaper to find than the dex skill gems. As for the gloves, I generate frenzy charges through the gloves. A lot of you guys were asking about where you get frenzy charges. I'm getting it through my gloves with the 5% frenzy charge on kill. This is pretty consistent through mapping. For bossing, it's not as consistent. If you are really wanting to get frenzy charges, go with a frenzy barrage support on your wand skill. This will allow you to generate frenzy charges and keep them consistently, and then you can take off the curse on hit flammability and get curse enemies with level 8 flammability on one of your rings. This will allow you to keep up frenzy charges, get a little bit of damage increase, and also have an extra skill on your wand attack where you can put something like Cooling Strike, Onslaught, or Blind. Lastly, I want to talk about the flasks. I went with the Ziri's Promise. It's a lot of damage, pretty common to use. Same as Wise Oak, Elemental Pen, really common. But a lot of people went with Roomies, and I ended up going with it later on because it gives a lot of defense and it also gives us the armor. So it kind of just helps us out and sustain and not get one shot. And as for the other flasks, Quicksilver and a Jade Flask with Freeze Immune and Bleed Immune because those feel necessary. Now I'm going to be getting into the cluster jewels. What did I think about them? How did they do? I believe they did really well, and in future builds I would probably go with more cluster jewels. The reason I didn't with this build is because I tended this build to be more beginner league start friendly, and so I didn't want to kill this build in cluster jewels. And I know I could have later on, but I ended up making another build anyways with a ton of cluster jewels, so I got my fix from that anyways. So what are the cluster jewels I went with? What's important? Doriana's Lesson, I believe, is really helpful for survivability and sustaining your life. It's just a really good node. Sadist, I would say, is the top priority on a large jewel you're going to be looking for. So basically we always shock and chill, as you guys know, and so that's 40% guaranteed damage on our build. And then we have a good chance to ignite with flammability and combustion and on Wave of Conviction and everything. So we've got a pretty much 60% damage boost from this little keynote, and that's going to be more than pretty much any other keynote on a cluster jewel. Next, I just went with some life on actually both of these. I went with just high life and yeah, as much life as I can get with decently budget friendly jewels. And I just wanted to get my life, I wanted to get it over 7,000, but I know if I level up about 3 more times, so currently I'm level 93, by the time I reach level 95 or 96, I'll probably have over 7,000 health by then, so it's not too big of a worry. Wanted to address a few things on the passive tree for you guys, and many questions I've got. The first one being most importantly sovereignty. A lot of you guys have had that question a ton on why don't I have enough mana reserved, I can't reserve my 3rd Spellslinger, blah blah blah. What is going on? So what's going on is that you guys transition from a 5 link to a 6 link. If you're using a 5 link, you are not going to need to spec into this 4 nodes into sovereignty. This is because on a 5 link you have less mana reserve from your Spellslinger because you have that one less jewel. But when you use that 6th link on your Volatile Dead, you will have too much mana being reserved by that alone, so you're going to need to spec your 4 points into sovereignty to be able to use 3 Spellslingers once again. Another thing I want to address is Spiritual Aid. Why are we taking it? That's because passively we get a lot of minion damage from our Ascendancy. We get a bunch of bonus damage, and on top of that we could take extra minion damage through like Lord of the Dead going through our tree and other nodes that we get from going into Spiritual Aid that just give us bonus damage for very little cost of our passive points. So it's a really high DPS increase, and if you are leveling this build for the first time, you're gonna want to rush to Elemental Overload, and then you're gonna want to rush to Spiritual Aid. Spiritual Aid and Elemental Overload are your big damage increases for this build. So once you do that, then you can start speccing into the other parts of the tree, like go down. Another part I wanted to address is the anoints. A lot of you had questions on what to anoint. Anointing is, there's no defined one to anoint. It's what you feel like you're missing on your build, in my opinion. Originally I was going to go with Heart of Flame. It costs gold oil, unfortunately, so it's a little more expensive, but it does give you Fire Pen, and it gives you Fire Damage Leech's Energy Shield. So if you have a high Energy Shield build, I would recommend going with this one or speccing into it with your passive points. But another great node to anoint is the one I did, Deflection. It gives just a lot of block, and it's a really cheap anoint. So if you guys are on a little bit of a budget, I would recommend going with Deflection. And as well as League Start build, go with Deflection. It's really good block chance, and having more survivability is always a good thing. And if you guys feel like it, you could either go with Prodigal Perfection. It's even cheaper of an anoint, but it gives you spell damage and more spell damage for more mana. I don't have much mana to take advantage of this, so I didn't end up going with it. But it's also a decent choice if you feel like you wanted more damage for a budget version of anointing. Some of you have had the question on why we put Inspiration as a support on Volatile Dead. Actually, Volatile Dead does not spend mana. It is linked to Spellslinger, so it cannot gain those inspiration charges. So why is it on there? It's actually on there because we do gain the charges when we spend a mana from different resources that also have inspiration support. So we have Barrage with inspiration support. So every time we cast Barrage, we gain a charge of inspiration, which also applies to anything else that has inspiration linked to it, which is our Volatile Dead and our Detonate Dead. So we're getting the maximum charges really quick because Barrage we can cast a bunch of times, and we're always pretty much casting it because that's our main source of DPS. And yeah, that's how we get around the not spending mana on the inspiration charges. I wanted to go over some interactions of spawning the Volatile Dead ball. Some of you are saying that it's not spawning or half spawns are happening, and I want to go over some tips on how to improve it, not necessarily fix it, because it's kind of a thing that sometimes happens no matter what. But I'm going to just give you guys some tips that you guys can keep in your mind while you're playing this build. So the first thing is that if there's no room for spawning, so if you put it in a pocket, you're going to get about half spawn on average. So just be aware of that. You have to have room to spawn. Another thing is that an interaction with consuming corpses, even if there's corpses way over here and I spawn and I'm going to spawn them way over here, it's still going to consume the corpses super far away if there's no like thing blocking the my vision from them. So you guys got to remember that, because if there's corpses in my vision and I'm about only a half screen away from them and I spawn my balls, say if I want to spawn them on Nico, right? But these corpses are nearby and I'm still in its field of vision, right? My player's field of vision is kind of looking at them. It has a good chance to actually spawn on the old corpses versus the new corpses. So we're going to try this out real quick. So I casted my new corpses on Nico, but instead it casts on my previous old corpses. So a lot of the time it likes to prioritize the old corpses versus the new corpses. This is an interaction because Barrage kind of skips it. So like the first cast of Barrage creates the corpses, and the last cast of Barrage creates the corpses because of the server time ticks. But the first cast will actually cast consume the corpses and cast the Volatile Dead, and then the last cast will create the corpses. This is some like weird interaction that happens, not always, but you guys just have to remember if you have corpses nearby, sometimes it's going to take the old corpses versus the new ones, so keep that in mind. Another thing that's a big game changer is that when you're spawning corpses, don't put your cursor on top of your player character. Put them further away, like half screen away or maybe quarter screen away. This is because, so I'm going to show you guys, if I put it like only a little bit away from my character, I only spawn less than half of the balls, and this will continue to happen if I keep spawning on myself. because I'm not in the field of vision of the new corpses, and if I'm on myself, the spell cascade doesn't spawn all the corpses. So in general, what you're going to want to do is put your mouse like quarter screen away, cast, and then you get the full spell cascade plus all the balls to spawn on average. So try that out, see if you guys get the same interactions, and hopefully these little tips helped you guys out in some way. That's pretty much it I had for the video on this update. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It wasn't a huge update. There wasn't too many things I actually did with this build, but I gained a lot of knowledge on this build and I've learned a lot, and I wanted to share a lot of it just in a condensed little video, really, for you guys, and hope this addressed any questions and actually addressed them in a deeper way than if I were to type it back at you. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!